Walter's health-oriented philanthropy, like so much of his work, stems from his own personal experiences. Once he sees a problem, he always tries to find a solution.
We looked at different areas that we could assist, and I was very interested in medical research because my brother's daughter has got MS. We got heavily involved with MS, so that's what did it. A little bit of family and a little bit of self-interest in the different areas. Looked around and we saw arthritis, because very few people were contributing to arthritis. So we got involved with Toronto Western Hospital on arthritis.
Walter has invested in several different areas of health research, starting with research around the causes and cures of arthritis.
I'm an orthopedic surgeon specializing particularly in problems of the knee, and one of the other hats I wear is as executive director of the Osteoarthritis Research Center. The original vision of the OA Research Center, which was set up about 8 years ago, was to try to identify some of the unmet needs. Osteoarthritis is the commonest cause of pain and disability in patients over the age of 50, and it's really reached epidemic proportions. But today we don't have many tools for treating this, and we identified the disease relatively late in the process. So the idea behind this center was that we would innovate on the diagnostic side and on the therapeutic side, new treatments, new biomarkers, new imaging techniques that can help us to diagnose arthritis at an earlier age so it can be treated, prevented, and cured, and in patients with more established disease have less invasive treatments than total knee replacement. So the funding from the Walter and Maria Schroeder Foundation have been absolutely critical in allowing us to have funds which can allow us to develop these innovations and, more importantly, then begin to commercialize them so we can actually get them out to the patient.
There was some very innovative work being done at Toronto Western Hospital. So we contributed money towards that and stayed actively involved with them with great satisfaction to see some of the success they're having with some of the funds we provided.
I trained at several places. I trained in India initially, and then I was in UK, then in New Zealand, and in States, and then Canada. I actually was in Montreal before when I got a call from Wayne Marshall to join the arthritis program at University Health Network, and I think I made the best move possible, the best place where you can actually do the research in the field of arthritis. If you actually look into arthritis in Canada alone, we almost have 1 in 5 Canadians who are living with arthritis. To be honest, if a place where you actually can find a combination of clinical and basic research and also inclusion of predictive analytics by inclusion of artificial intelligence, right now Toronto Western Hospital and Krembil Research Institute within the University Health Network is the hub of arthritis research within Canada and also worldwide.
Walter has discovered that the system's research goals can only be achieved with the help of generous philanthropists and other private foundations.
The next area was the brain, Alzheimer's and dementia, and seeing what Toronto Rehab was doing in the area with research and seeing that they were treating some of the dementia as well and were having success with it.
My name is Jeff Fernie. I'm sort of the granddad here. I used to be the Institute Director. I now hold a chair called the Crayon Family Chair in Prevention and Healthcare Sciences. You know, my biggest interest is preventing problems, prevention, treatment, and management for the rest of your life in your home. The thing that I'm really passionate about is stopping people getting into a hospital in the first place. Alzheimer's is a growing problem. It's not just Alzheimer's, it's dementia. I mean, most people who have dementia have it from a mixed cause. But we have so little research going on into supporting those people. Preventing it, of course, we want to prevent it totally. We want to treat it, and we then have to support it. We have to look at all 3 components.
Dr. Fernie sees Alzheimer's and dementia treatment as being multifaceted, with many different approaches to patient treatment.
How do you know whether someone who has dementia is in pain? Is that why they're acting up? Is that why they're anxious? Is that why they're pacing around? Maybe they can't articulate that. Can you predict from the way they're walking whether there's a sudden deterioration, they're going to fall over and break their hip tomorrow? We try to do those sort of predicting things, prevent things from going wrong. That's why we think so highly of Walter and why he fits well here. I mean, there are others who fit well here as well, but the culture here is about practical solutions to common problems which are often thought of as maybe not sexy enough for research, you know.
My name is Mark Bailey. I'm the medical director of UHN Toronto Rehabilitation Institute and also the physiatrist in chief at UHN. So philanthropy has had a huge impact on our work. If you think about all the potential inputs that it has, it includes buying equipment for us for research as well as just to provide care to patients. Things like instrumental things like TVs and other things that makes the environment more comfortable, to really important donations like the Walter and Maria Schroeder Foundation has done to really drive novel research forward with really investments in things that are really important in changing the way we provide care. So philanthropy has a huge impact on what we do every day.
And the third area we got involved with was brain heart, where we were impressed by Dr. Peterson, what he was doing, and the fact that he was saving lives with some of the technology he was using and his abilities. So those three things together got us into the 3 hospitals.
One of the problems Walter and other philanthropists have discovered is that the Canadian health funding system is falling behind the pace of innovation. New technologies could revolutionize treatment for many patients, but funding shortages mean these new treatments are not always getting to the people who actually need them.
My name is Mark Peterson. I'm a heart surgeon. I've been working at St. Michael's Hospital for just over 12 years, and what I do during the day is heart surgery, complex aortic surgery, valve surgery, but I also work very closely with my colleagues who are cardiologists doing interventional or wire catheter-based operations. A large part of what we do is doing research, in particular focusing on the impact of innovative procedures on patients' health and outcomes. What I've been focusing on, and what we've been focusing on, is trying to accelerate the pace of innovation as it pertains to heart surgery and interventional cardiology. Just as a bit of background, in the past, the traditional way that a heart surgeon would work would be generally in isolation. So we would practice with our residents, fellows, and teams in the operating room, basically doing open surgical procedures. So we'd open the chest and fix things under direct vision. But over the last 10 to 20 years, we've started doing operations that are more minimally invasive. And a lot of those operations involve not opening the chest. They involve using wires and catheters. This has been the domain of what we call the interventional cardiologist. So that's a heart doctor who's not a surgeon, but is trained specifically to do procedures using catheters and wires. As we've developed more operations to treat more complicated heart procedures, particularly on the heart valves, we've started working together.
Hospitals like St. Michael's and UHN are discovering ways to pull their specialists out of traditional silos and unite all their efforts into greater patient outcomes.
The main thrust behind what we call the Brain and Heart Center is really to exploit and accelerate the pace of synergy and innovation between these groups. And in addition to the heart surgeons and the cardiologists working together, my colleagues in neurosurgery who do brain surgery and my colleagues in interventional neuroradiology, they also have started working together. So we basically have these groups of doctors which used to work in a siloed fashion. Now there's an overlap in what they do. They still do their separate work, but more and more time during the day, more and more operations are being done together. Unfortunately, the infrastructure in the hospital is not up to speed to support this paradigm shift in how we treat patients. And so what Walter and Maria Schroeder's gift has given us, it's allowed us to, in a phased approach, design a space that's state-of-the-art, which allows these teams to work together in a 21st century way with the best imaging, the best that the operating room has to offer, all blended together so that we can do these operations better, faster, achieve better patient outcomes, and also help develop the next set of tools, both from a technical point of view as well as the actual implants and devices that are needed to solve the next set of complicated problems.
The last one that came was something that appealed to me was providing some help for the homeless. In this specific case, providing medicine for the homeless was an appeal, and we found Dr. Wang to help us do that.
I'm a specialist in internal medicine and I'm the director of the MAP Center for Urban Health Solutions. My research focuses on improving the health of people who are experiencing homelessness and finding solutions to end chronic homelessness itself. We call it high-touch medicine rather than high-tech medicine. We use all of the technological interventions available to us, but often what's needed is for us to step back and look at the whole person and the big picture. So our research focuses on solutions that can, if and when proven to be effective, can be translated into policy and into health systems so that we can make a difference at a broader level across our entire city and our province. Often what we need to do is think about delivering the resources that we have in a more coordinated and focused way. So for example, the Schroeder Foundation has enabled us to evaluate the ability of a coordinated program, including peer support workers, to improve people's access to the services that are out there.
Despite the generosity of the Walter and Maria Schroeder Foundation, research funding is not the only issue concerning and constraining our health system in Canada.
The way things stand right now, the governments don't initiate, initially at least, very much for capital expenditure beyond the base for the hospital. So if they want to really do the exotic stuff, they need private capital, and that's what we provided with the Brain Heart.
Doctors like Jeff Fernie imagine new horizons in patient care, but are constrained by limited government research funding.
It's a surprise to people, I think, that scientists' salaries are not paid for by government, with a very small exception. But the majority of salaries of scientists in Canada are paid for out of philanthropy. It's people like Walter and Peter Crayon who pays my chair and others who are supporting science in this country. So we have in this institute 46 scientists. We rely very much on philanthropy to pay their salaries, and then those scientists go out and apply for their operating funds from Canadian Institute of Health Research or Alzheimer's Society or Heart and Stroke or whatever.
Healthcare experts working in the system recognize the demographic problem, but the systemic changes needed have to come in the form of government policy. The current system and funding model just can't handle it. Operating rooms are underused and understaffed, nurses are undervalued, and often innovation gets cast aside in favor of the status quo.
The hospital's budget, both from the point of view of actually funding the procedures as well as having adequate space to do it, is predicated on supporting kind of the everyday or the standard operation that most patients need. The hospital doesn't have a mechanism other than through the foundation to support these operations. We require foundation money, such as from Walter and Maria, to allow us to fund the actual operations. We also need the space that has the technical components, the infrastructure. So I'll give you an example. So when you bring together the best of a surgical operating room and the best of an interventional either cath lab or a radiology suite, we rely on the X-ray equipment to image the patient indirectly. And in order to have images that are processed in real time, these are brand new expensive probes. So we use a generous gift like Walter and Maria's to help us buy those probes, help us develop the next state-of-the-art hybrid operating suite, allows us to do these operations and makes us attractive to companies who develop some of this technology and are looking for places in the world where they have the infrastructure and the doctors and expertise to do these procedures.
A typical hospital has got a certain base budget for capital equipment, which isn't enough. To do the things that it wants to do, it needs private philanthropy, and that's one of the things we do and did. Provided, for example, equipment for imaging for the Brain Heart Clinic that we were heavily financing. But again, it's a matter of funding. The hospitals have not got enough funding right now from the province to be able to do any follow-ups. And that's resulting in inefficiencies because the people keep coming back and they don't get proper follow-up treatment. And the hospital has no idea what happened to them.
Sustainability of the healthcare system is something we think about on a daily basis because the aging of the population is leading to a larger demand on the system, and so therefore we must be prepared to make our system more efficient, and if we don't, then the system will collapse. There's a gap for us in just delivering care across the continuum, which means that when people come to us, we help them to get better through inpatient rehabilitation, and then they go to the community. And there's a significant gap in the ability to provide services in the community on an ongoing basis to people. They need to continue to maintain their level of function as long as is possible. And we have a challenge in continuing to offer services after they've been discharged from here in particular. We lack people and funding for providing service on an ongoing basis to keep our patients and the people we serve functioning as best they can.
The current situation might have its challenges, but medical professionals remain optimistic. Technology can offer both unusual and ingenious solutions.
We're trying to use technology as best we can. We're doing some fairly advanced things on treatment. There are ways of treating Alzheimer's that are some quite exciting ways now with the use of electrical current implanted into the brain. We have a program called Crania, where we're putting electrodes on the inside of the skull that will sense when the brain is behaving funnily. Things are starting to go wrong. If you're about to have a seizure, get some activity, and then you squirt some electricity into an area of the brain which will dampen that seizure down and prevent it. You forget something and you're trying to recall it. Imagine if you could detect that effort to recall and then cause a little microvolts of electricity into the memory surfaces of the brain, and suddenly the name comes to you, or whatever comes to you. The potential is huge. We're just scratching the surface so far of that, but it's a program that Walter's involved in funding as well, and really exciting.
With the advent of new technologies like artificial intelligence, doctors and scientists can imagine new worlds of healthcare.
Within the arthritis program, we're trying to build a program where we can actually come up with a sort of a mechanism how you can predict somebody is going to have a surgery. What is going to be the outcome of that surgery? Doing so, you have to have artificial intelligence. You got to combine the clinical data as well as a combination of biological data, which allows us to create this complex algorithm which tells us is it possible to actually have a possible outcome of surgery, whether you're going to have a successful surgery or not.
One of the biggest issues facing our health system today is the demographic and fiscal challenge caused by baby boomers. As this large group rapidly ages, our current health model will struggle mightily to accommodate them.
In 5 to 10 years, Canada is going to be in real trouble. And it's going to have a health system they can't afford, and there's going to be all health to pay. And the killer is going to be health costs, because with demographics and the rising number of people, old people living longer, the provinces will not be able to afford the present health system. So in the next 5 years, something is going to snap here.
Canada's system generally produces positive outcomes, despite its many stresses. But it needs new and innovative thinking to continue to offer Canadians the highest level of care.
It's interesting, we couldn't get on a plane today and fly anywhere to the perfect healthcare system. So everyone has imperfections, including Canada and Ontario. That having been said, when we look at some of the outcomes in terms of life expectancy, maternal mortality, fetal mortality, Canada's a very successful country when it comes to health results. But there's plenty of room to improve. The importance of healthcare recognizing that it is actually a customer service business. And while it is very scientifically based, and we do need to recognize that what we want and what we need are not always perfectly aligned, every patient is uniquely qualified to determine whether or not they felt well cared for in the process. And when we hear concerns from patients, it's almost always about communication and coordination. Rather than that simply be foisted on the shoulders of the providers, I think we also have to recognize that our providers are very stressed. At University Health Network and our sites, we're often operating at 120% capacity. And so that's a very challenging environment to ask people to bring their best selves to work in every clinical encounter. It can be very frustrating and very difficult when you don't have the tools that you were trained to use to deliver excellent health care. So increasingly, can we make sure that those resources that we do have, and they're significant, right? We spend about 43 cents of every single Ontario tax dollar in healthcare. We're the largest expenditure in budget, but we really do need to make sure that we're getting what we can out of it, but also aligning those other issues so that they are really pointing in the same direction to satisfying the expectations of our patients and clients and allowing high quality of work life for those who are privileged to deliver care.
I think that there are very few people that believe that our current healthcare model is going to be sustainable over time. Yet the problem is continuing to grow. The population is aging. With increasing life expectancies, most of the demands on healthcare are at the end of life, the last few decades, and people are living longer. And then there's the whole baby boomer demographic. So we have tremendous pressure on our healthcare system, and as it's currently constituted, there just is not enough capacity to be able to deliver the quality of care that we'd all like to see for our population. And the reality is that as medical innovations do evolve, then there's costs associated with those innovations, and we're going to increasingly be left behind other countries in that we can't afford the innovations that are being developed. So clearly, our model has to change.
There are concerns that a lack of funding has even led to an underutilization of existing hospital facilities.
You know what, there are very strong opinions on this one, and I don't think there's a perfectly right answer. On the one hand, if you're an economist and looking at the rules of economics, you'd say we're dramatically underusing our physical plants, right? So just for example, in the world's most sophisticated operating rooms here on University Avenue, they lay fallow many hours of the day because we operate from roughly 8 or 7 till 3 or 4, and then have a couple of emergency rooms available for after hours. On the other hand, we also recognize that we have some challenges around workforce. If you're operating at 3 in the morning, you probably can't operate again at 10 in the morning. You obviously have to look at how one would balance that.
But not all medical practitioners are up for the endless battle between their professional ideals and the reality of the current Canadian medical system. Dr. Mayich is a leading orthopedic practitioner in New Brunswick.
Being someone's doctor is not, I know people like to talk about like it's a job, and it is a job, and that's what it is by definition, but it's more than that. But after fighting pretty hard, I'm among 7 specialists that I know of that are leaving the province. I'm the only one that's leaving medicine, and it's burnout. And it comes down to futility.
Dr. Josh knows he can do more, but funding constraints have led to endless frustrations.
I developed this space here, which is a private cast room. I hired my cast technician, Doug, privately. And on average, through this clinic per year, we are seeing over 4,000 patients. That brought my utilization of the clinic space at the regional, opening up for other doctors, down by over 60%. And after 18 months of being here, my wait list went from 2.5 years to less than 3 months for patients waitlisted as a 3. I knew at that time the biggest challenge wasn't necessarily getting patients from being seen and into the operating room. It was seeing patients who were waiting up to 2 years for non-operative advice.
The doctor has become disillusioned by the endless wait times his patients have been forced to endure, even for relatively minor procedures.
So with plantar fasciitis or with a condition that didn't require surgery, they were waiting 2 years to see me, and then I would see them and say, oh, we need to do this, this, and this, and they'd be like, you gotta be kidding me. I waited 2 years for you to tell me I need an orthotic. And the part that just breaks my heart is you see a patient who legitimately needs something, and you're like, okay, you need to, and I've done this innumerable numbers of times, making myself the liar that I promised I never would be, saying this guy's got 3 kids. He runs a small business. He can't walk. His small business, he's a landscaper. He's on meal tickets. He's a super proud guy, The
pressures and stresses of the Canadian health system are embodied in this doctor's dilemma.
I need surgery. Can't get him there. Can't.
He knows what his patients need, and he can deliver the treatments that will help them, but there is just not enough time or funding, so instead, they wait.
I call, I email, I yell. sorry. My partners say, that's your OR time. That's what you get. Stop complaining. We all have patients who are waiting. Everyone's behind. Just shut up and do your job. Stop emailing us. Stop talking. You just need to get your job done, okay? Just the sooner you accept this, the easier it's going to become. And I'm unfortunately the product of a Christian Catholic upbringing, which taught me that I cannot accept that. You cannot accept that. It's not okay to accept that. It's in my DNA to not accept that. So it becomes like the Hamlet soliloquy, right? To be or not to be, you know?
For Dr. Mayich, the sheer futility of working in a chronically underfunded system has just become too much.
And so I've taken up arrows and say, you know what, I can't keep doing this, you know, because that weighs on me. Like I lay in bed at night and I think about that guy, you know. I know he's out there. I know he's a proud guy who wants to work, who loves his wife and loves his kids. And I know he's probably drinking a bit more than he should. And he's probably smoking a little more dope than he needs to. And he's getting addicted to THC and he's getting addicted to alcohol. Because unlike me, he doesn't go home to his, you know, beautiful wife and 3 kids and good income. And he's just waiting by the phone for that phone call. And I call and I play the game and I make the numbers look like they're supposed to look like. And I say, guy, I'm going to get your surgery done in October, okay? I'm going to. And then a diabetic shows up with a grossly infected foot with pus coming out of everywhere. And my infectious disease colleague is stopping me in the hallway saying, Josh, you got to look at this patient, man. And I have to, right? The second he tells me about that patient's story, I have to. I don't operate on this guy's foot and do what needs to be done. He's going to lose his foot. He might die, right? And then guess what happens? I get a phone call from a colleague somewhere else in New Brunswick saying this guy did some coke and fell off a roof and fracture dislocated his talus in a way that's not like there's pieces everywhere. You need to help this guy. And then that guy's surgeries, because of those other serious issues, October becomes November. And then I see him in December and he can't afford to buy presents for his children. And his wife is threatening to leave him. And there's OR slowdown. And I put my name on the list for OR time. And for very valid metrical reasons, I don't get access to any of that OR time. And I call him in January and his wife's left him. And I see him in the holding area for surgery and he's crying because his whole world is falling apart. And for those of us who, you know, you know, you study philosophy, you study Shakespeare. The Hamlet thing kept coming up in my mind. It's like, to be or not to be. Like, at what point do you say, that's that's enough. I don't have anything left to give in a way that I think is going to have any impact on anyone's life. And I know that speaks for a lot of what my friends say. They feel the exact same way, where they're just like, man, it's this tension where we know what we have to do. Unlike any other time in human history, we have the evidence to say what we must do. And we have lawyers there who are like saying, this is what needs to happen. We have administrators telling us what we can't do. And we have politicians telling us what we should do. Like, where's the room for humanity in that?
Our conversations with these incredible and dedicated doctors leave concerns that the Canadian health system is about to hit a wall. The solution lies with Ottawa. Only the federal government has the fiscal capacity to keep up with health demands.
The reason they haven't got the money right now is the feds are squeezing them by adding services without giving them the funding to do it. And it's getting worse. And demographics is going to change the game. And it's getting worse every year with the older people and more of them. And that's the basic theme I want to portray here.
Walter and Maria Schroeder understand the pressures on the medical system, but they're not giving up. Walter believes that for every problem, there is a solution, and helping to resolve the many challenges of the Canadian medical system is well worth both his time and his effort.
We've got the latitude to do as much good as we can in the few years we got left. And I don't know how many years that's going to be, but our aim is to try and keep us up as long as we can, as long as we're alive.